All right, so Kelsey, before we get started with our panel, I'm going to invite Kelsey Wiskirchen, our executive director, to talk a little bit about WARP and some things that are coming up around the corner.
Great, thank you, Judy, and thank you everyone who's joined us today. Welcome to you all. I'm going to start just by quickly sharing a couple of things. If you are new to WARP, if you're not familiar with our organization, Weave a Real Piece. We are an international textile networking organization, and I invite you to visit weavearealpiece.org to learn more about WARP. One really important announcement that I want to share is if you visit our website, you'll see this announcement at the very top of the page about our 2022 annual meeting. So our program this year will be virtual. It's next month, June 24th through 26th, and it is free and open to all. So whether you're a WARP member or not, we invite you to register to join us. It's a weekend-long program focused on tradition, innovation, and community stewardship in textiles. And we have presenters who will be joining us from 4 different continents. So we hope you visit the website and take a look and register to join us. I also want to share that here under the events tab, you can see all upcoming WARP events. And also you can see recordings from all previous events. So by early Monday or Tuesday next week, we will have the recording from today's program here under previous events. And you can also see all of our other panel discussions listed there and watch the recordings. And another announcement, I want to share that Andean Textile Arts has a fundraiser right now for an internship program at the Center for Traditional Textiles of Cusco, which is where our 3 presenters today are joining us from. So this is a really wonderful fundraiser going on right now. And I will put the link for this directly into the chat so that you can visit the fundraiser. And there is a donate button down at the bottom of the page, and you can read about the program here. So thank you again for joining us today, and I will turn it back over to Judy.
Okay, very good. So we're up to 80 participants, which is wonderful. So glad to have you all with us today. We'll go ahead and start the program. I imagine there'll be a few more people join as we move along, but I appreciate all of you who are here coming on time and now, and let's roll. Our program today has an interesting and special theme, and it's a topic that's probably familiar to many of us. The theme is, how do we engage young people in the textile arts so that they can help us imagine a future in which they would be an integral part of it. It's something a lot of guilds have worked on and been creative about. A lot of us as weavers have taken on younger people to mentor. But we're going to hear today from 2 young people who've become very involved with textile arts in their own lives. They're involved with CTTC, and they're going to talk a little bit about their own work as well as why it's important to them. Moderating and also presenting today is, I shouldn't say moderating, I should say translating, because our young weaver presenters are going to be speaking in Spanish, so we have a translator, and that's Diana Hendrickson. Diana is Nilda's niece, for any of you who are familiar with CTTC, and she's a scholar and a consultant in her own right. She is 3rd generation weaver, but went to college in the U.S. at the University of Wisconsin. Her consulting is about things like social impact, so she's perfect to be involved with nonprofit organizations that are trying to make a difference in young people's lives. So Diana, if you'd introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story and take it from here. I do want to have one proviso. Most of you are muted, and that's to prevent unintended interruptions during the course of the program. If you're not muted, I would ask you to do that now. But we'd love to see your smiling faces, so don't go away. Just mute yourself. If you do have a question during the presentation, I would ask you to type it into the chat. I'll monitor that chat, and if I need to interrupt, I will during the presentation. Otherwise, we'll take questions at the end. Okay, now we're ready for you, Diana.
Thank you, Judy, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. I'll give a small presentation about the history of CTTC, and we'll move on to the wonderful presentation that the girls here have prepared for you. So I'll start sharing my screen. Wonderful. All of this information can also be found in our website, which is textilescusco.org, as it's showed in the screen right now. So if you have any more questions or you want to review this information later on your own time, have a little more reading, feel free to enter and follow us there. Everything began in the 1970s to 1990s with a struggle to keep textiles alive. At that time is when artificial yarn and dyes started appearing here in the Cusco Andes. So weavers found those colors more appealing than natural dyed colors. So they stopped using natural fibers and started opting for the synthetic ones, as well as the newer generations didn't pay much attention or valued the weaving traditions at the time. So complex designs and techniques were starting to be lost and disappear. And that's when Hilda, the founder and now director of CTTC, began work with her mother and a group of her mother's friends to recover and maintain traditional textiles and their designs, their techniques. They would just gather together on Sundays or Saturdays at my grandmother's backyard, actually, and started weaving, sharing techniques, talking about their traditions, how they used to do natural dyes, and so on. But with the help of Hilda and some international supporters, they actually began a more organized work, and that's where the first weaving association was created. And that was the Chinchero, now called, that now is much bigger, started working. Work wasn't only to meet on Saturdays and Sundays for fun, start weaving together, but they started to work as a little enterprise, selling their textiles to visitors and tourists that would go through Chinchero, eat there. And that way it was a form of encouragement for the ladies to have a new form of income with their traditions, their textiles, and it was encouraging for them to practice their traditions, their designs, their techniques, and everything like that. In addition, with the help of Hilda, the first young weavers group was formed. And the purpose of that was to teach the young weavers, young people from the community of Chinchero, men and women, so young boys and girls, could join if they were interested in learning how to weave, about their traditions, and being encouraged to use their traditional outfits as well. So that was the beginning of everything, the beginning of the work, even before CTTC existed. But in 1996, since it was seen that the group in Chinchero was flourishing and they were having a good time, they were doing a good number of textiles, they were feeling comfortable, and some of the natural dyes and their traditional techniques were recovered and maintained, then a new era began. And this era was to expand and recover even more of what was being lost in textiles, in the textile culture here in Cusco. So in 1996, first was founded a Textile Center Association. And with a lot of work, in 1998 is when the Center for Traditional Textiles of Cusco, an NGO, was officially formed and legally formed. The mission changed a little bit, so it started with the work of some joint associations. So we continued the work with Chinchero. Then we expanded into Accha Alta and Pitumarca. Those are other weaving associations. And at first, the work was to work with the elders, talked with them, recover some of the lost techniques, some complex designs, start working with natural dyes once again. And that was the first work. Also, as the communities were established, we helped CTTC started helping these weaving groups of people to become formal associations so that they could support themselves in the future in case anything happened to CTTC. They were independent and recognized by the government. At that time, we still didn't have Young Weavers Group, but it was part of our mission and our view of what we wanted for the future. And when we look to how everything's changed and what CTTC is now, it started working with the recovery of new textiles, establishing new organizations, new weaving associations. It created its first store, as we can see the image here in Hilda with some of our supporters, opening the first store, our first museum. So it gave us a little more independence, a little more impact in society about putting this mission and this willingness to recover these textiles, this importance to the public. At that time, that was something radical because there was a lot of discrimination and a lot of exclusion from traditional weavers and traditional people in Cusco. So that was a bold move that was led by CTTC and has created a wonderful impact and wonderful change in society today. So now we come to today's mission in textiles. CTTC has grown a lot. Our mission has changed a little bit, but at the core of it, the same vision remains. Now we work with 10 weaving associations all across the Cusco region. We dedicate ourselves to the recovery of lost techniques because a lot of the traditional techniques from each community and each association has been successfully recovered. The quality of the textiles have improved radically. And of course, with that, we have the book publications that we'll see in a little bit as well. We have an economic support for the weavers that is a sustainable income for a lot of them, sometimes even for the whole family, because both husband and wife work with us and are registered in the Weaving Association. And for that, we have textile sales and demonstrations. Now we have one main store in Cusco, the weaving demonstrations and store in Chinchero. And of course, we have other opportunities for help if anybody wants. We have an education department that continues our work with projects that work with young weavers, the elders groups, with more museum exhibits, trips to international conferences, and more things like that, that not only create awareness for the outside public, but it also helps us accomplish our mission, help us recover more things. Projects that CTTC has at the moment and will continue throughout the lives of CTTC is the Young Weavers Group. We have successfully created a Young Weavers Group in all 10 weaving associations. They vary in ages. Some groups have young kids as young as 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds. And we have young weavers groups that have even 30-year-olds because it all depends on the perspective of their culture in their association and their community to see what is considered to be young. A lot of times that is when they get married or have children. So if they're not having children until their 30s, then they're still young weavers.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I want to share with all of you a little video so that we can see a little more of the reality associations are. This video doesn't have any sound, so if you don't hear anything, you're fine. Please enjoy. Wonderful. So as you can see, a lot of the weaving associations, or all of them, are in rural areas in the Cusco region. But to learn a little more geographically of how far they're situated from the city of Cusco, we have a little view of a map. This is just found in Google Maps. So right here, as you can see, we can have the city of Cusco, and an average between 45 minutes to the longest trip down here to the city of Santo Tomas, at between 8 and 9 hours from the city of Cusco, is where all these weaving associations are located. These are our 10 weaving associations that we work with. Each one of them, even though it seems like they're close by, they are completely different. They have different traditions, different designs, different techniques, and that's what CTTC's mission, that's how CTTC's mission is enriched by them, because each one of them provides something completely different that we work to recover and maintain for future generations.
Very good.
There we go. As part of our projects and our mission, we do the recovery of lost techniques. Here are some examples of what we have done and recovered in the past. The first picture on the right is a double weave technique that was recovered in 2017. The double weave technique is a little more complex because it doesn't only have like the 2 layers that you usually choose to recover to create an image, but it has 4 layers. Down here in the middle right, we have a picture of Chinchero weavers recovering the technique, knotted technique, a wari technique that was first originated about 1,000 years ago, and it was lost hundreds of years ago. And once again, we can see this technique being used by the weavers, and you can find some of the pieces in our shop actually. We have also here in the middle left a picture of the Anillado technique. This is a very complex technique that was created between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, and also lost hundreds of years ago. It was recovered in 2010 and 19. This one is a very complex technique because you use needles to weave with, and that creates very, very small pieces of textiles that are in 3D. Like we can see in the picture. And the last one here on the left side is the new watai. It's a form of tie-dye that is also wadi, and it's being recovered right now as we speak by 4 different associations. And that one is also about 1,000 years old when it was first created and was lost hundreds of years ago. So now we can see once again these techniques being woven by our associations and the weavers, and you can see some of the pieces in this. Part of our projects are also the books we've published with the help of Thrum's books. All of them are available to shop. They have different themes. The first one here is all the techniques and the weaving traditions from Chinchero, since it's our first weaving association in the beginning of our mission, how everything was created. We have it in a bilingual format. We have Tejiendo en los Andes, which is available in English and Spanish, and is more about the weaving culture in all of the associations and in the Cusco Andes. We have The Secret of Spinning and Weaving, Weaving and Knitting, that is only available in English at the moment. And that is a great book if you're interested in the little secrets of how pieces are created, about seeing all the techniques that we have available and all the techniques that the weaving associations have. And of course, the last book, Rostros de una Tradición, is a book dedicated to the elders that CTTC has worked with, because they are really the ones that taught us, once again, all the techniques, the complex designs and everything. So they are the base of why we continue to exist. And it's just a little gift from them. As I mentioned before, a lot of what we do also depends on sustainable income for the weavers, and of course an income for CTTC, so we can continue to carry out our programs and projects. And we do that through our stores and weaving demonstrations that happen in Chinchero, some weaving classes as well. And very soon we're opening a new gallery here in the second floor in the city of Cusco. The education department not only helps us with special projects like the creation of new exhibitions and museums, like we see here on the right side, a picture of our new museum, one that only has one exhibit in Chinchero. It's a living museum depicting the traditional life of a weaver and a weaver family. And of course, they help with the recovery of all the new techniques that we work with the special presentations, the special exhibitions, trips to trips abroad to gatherings, conferences, and more, as well as special programs that can happen either in Peru or in a different country. But going into the future of CTTC and why we're here today, one of the most important projects that we have is the Young Weavers Group. And we are happy that we have recovered the participation of young men in our Young Weavers groups, because in the past, the culture was very against men participating in weaving. It was a sexist move. It was a discrimination between men and women. So we are back to how it was hundreds of years ago, where men and women weave together. And for that, we have a new generation that is showing forth on our impact and how everything is moving forward. We have a past generation like Janet, which is a little older than me, actually. She is a professional now. She was one of the first members of Young Weavers Group in Pitumarca. She studied tourism in the university here in Cusco. She is wonderful, and she is now working as the head, well, just started working as the head of our education department. And here we have little pictures of May Sharon and Hilda, that are speakers today, to show us more of how this part of our project is playing a role for the future of textiles. And thank you. That's just our page. If you like to support us, we do take donations. You can also donate through ATA, which supports us since the beginning. Thank you.
Very nice, Diana. Thank you very much. I don't know about the rest of you, but I found the history of the organization fascinating. For some reason, I guess I thought it had been around forever. And no, they were responding to the decline in traditional textile arts, just like we were in the US. So I appreciate that background. Do you want to go ahead and introduce one of our young weavers?
Absolutely. First, I'm going to introduce May Sharon. I'm going to center a little bit the screen on her so you can see her a little better. May Sharon is 18 years old. She's from the Weaving Association of Patabamba. She is now currently studying to be a teacher in the University of San Antonio Abad del Cusco. That's our national university here. She started to become interested in textiles when she was 10 years old and joined the Young Weavers Group in her association in 2015. She's also a proud member of SEDUN, which is a university dance organization. So she is a wonderful dancer. Let's begin with her presentation.
Buenos días, muy buenos días. Mi nombre es May Sharon Quispojeda. Yo soy de la comunidad de Patabamba, que está aproximadamente a 12 kilómetros de la ciudad del Cusco.
Hello everyone, thank you for welcoming me. My name is May Sharon Quispojeda. I am 18 years old and I am from Patabamba Weaving Association that is about 12 kilometers away from the Cusco city.
Yo en mis ratos libres suelo realizar lo que más me gusta, que es la lectura y también el tejido.
I like to use my free time to do some reading and knitting, and that's usually what I spend my time on.
Bien, el tejido cintura es una tradición ancestral en mi comunidad Patabamba. Se dice que antiguamente solamente las mujeres tejían, realizaban ese tejido.
Backstrap weaving is an ancestral tradition in my community of Patabamba. In the past, it was said that only women were allowed to weave.
Pero hoy en día también los varones ya tejen y me alegra bastante que esa ya se haya extinguido, se haya terminado, porque tanto como hombres y mujeres tenemos la labor de preservar nuestras tradiciones.
Now we have successfully broken that bridge, and also young men and older men are weaving. That makes me very happy because it is both men and women's responsibility to maintain this tradition.
Las mujeres solían tejer antes y les enseñaban a sus hijas así de generación en generación, y ahora también seguimos tejiendo, seguimos preservando esa tradición que es el tejido a cintura.
In the past, it was traditional that older women would teach their daughters how to weave, and that tradition is being preserved till today.
Por ejemplo, aquí podemos apreciar, es una manta tejida por mi abuelita, que he obsequiado a mi mamá y también le he enseñado a tejer, y lo cual también mi mamá me enseñó lo que es el tejido a cintura.
Here in this slide, we can see a traditional older blanket. This is my grandmother's blanket, and she gifted this to my mother and taught her how to weave it. And then my mother also taught me how to weave a blanket like this.
Bien, aquí podemos apreciar un tejido con lana de oveja que es teñida con tintes naturales. Bueno, ¿y cómo lo conseguían los tintes naturales? Antiguamente practicaban lo que es el trueque y pues intercambiaban con algún producto, por ejemplo, con un tinte natural que es la cochinilla.
Here in this textile, we can also observe that it is made with wool and with natural dyes. The natural dyes in the past were obtained by something traditional that was called or an exchange in English, and it was on an exchange with sort of product and between some sort of product and a natural dye like cochinilla.
Aquí les presento algunos de mis trabajos, por pasadizo, el chumpi, la chalina, cartera, la cartuchera, la chuspa y la correa. Aquí tengo algunos de mis trabajos. Esta es una cartuchera, una chuspa.
Here you can see some of the work and some of the textiles I've done in the past, like a floor running, chumpi, which is a traditional belt, a scarf, a handbag, a coin purse, a pencil case. Chuspa is a shoulder strap, like cross shoulder traditional bag, and a modern belt. And here May Sharon is showing you some of her work, like a chuspa of the bags and a pencil case right here.
Dentro de mis tejidos yo realizo algunos diseños. Podemos ver la Accha, Patabamba también, Yamayupi. Esos diseños son representativos de mi comunidad.
Some of the traditional techniques that we use in my community, like the chasca, which is a star, Patabamba is the community, Yamayupi. Yamayupi. These designs represent my tradition, natural aspects, and animals.
Bien, cada diseño tiene un significado muy particular. Eso estaba desde nuestros ancestros. Lo diseñaron nuestros ancestros todavía y lo seguimos preservando. Y también seguimos innovando algunos diseños con el contexto en lo que vivimos, por ejemplo, con lo último, el COVID-19. Y bueno, seguimos innovando algunos diseños que son representativos de nuestra comunidad.
Each design has a unique meaning behind it, and all those meanings were created by our ancestors. We are continuing to preserve those meanings and work of our ancestors, but we also innovate with what we see nowadays with what surrounds us, like COVID-19 and the context that we live in.
Bien, la razón por la que yo realizo el tejido a cintura. La principal razón es preservar esta tradición. Eh, ¿Por qué? Porque ahora mayormente los jóvenes ya pues no están tejiendo y mi objetivo es que todos sigamos tejiendo, sigamos preservando esa tradición que que es algo que nos representa como una comunidad, como una cultura.
Here are some of the reasons of why I continue backstrap weaving. One of them is the preservation of this tradition, because a lot of the youth is no longer weaving. And I think all of this, the young weavers should continue to weave and preserve this tradition.
Bien, ¿y cómo lo voy a preservar? ¿Cómo voy a poder seguir preservando esa tradición? Bueno, a mí particularmente me gusta enseñar, bueno, y también estoy estudiando lo que es la docencia, y pues mi objetivo sería enseñar a otras generaciones para que sigan tejiendo ese tejido a cintura y que no se pierda esa tradición que tenemos, que es única, que nos representa.
So how am I going to preserve this tradition for the future? I like to teach. I am currently studying to be a teacher, so I would like to teach future generations how to weave and maintain this tradition.
Bien, una de las razones también es que nos solvente económicamente, porque muchas veces vienen visitantes del extranjero y se llevan como un recuerdo nuestras prendas, lo que tejemos. Y también ya nos ayuda económicamente, ya sea para los gastos del estudio, alimentación.
I would also like to help economically. A lot of the tourists and visitors take textiles, souvenirs, and memory pieces from their trips. This helps us economically with some of the expenses of education, daily life as well.
Y también por entretenimiento. En un momento, una vez que entro a tejer, salgo de mi zona de confort y me concentro en eso, lo que es el tejido, y pues estoy concentrada haciendo diseños o también innovando, y eso me entretiene a mí.
Another form that I like to preserve is as entertainment. When I weave, I come out of my comfort zone. I innovate with the weavings, and that entertains me.
Bien, el tejido a cintura es una tradición que tiene como objetivo ser percibido por todo el mundo. Bien, eso es uno de mis objetivos, que el tejido a cintura de mi comunidad, que es de mi cultura, sea percibido por todo el mundo. ¿Y cómo lo haré eso? Bueno, particularmente enseñando a generaciones, y que esas generaciones también enseñen a otras generaciones que vienen, y así no se pierda esa tradición tan bonita que tenemos. Y aparte de ello también ahí está la tecnología, ¿no? Que son las redes sociales.
So backstrap weaving is part of my tradition, and I aim that this tradition should reach all of the world. So how am I gonna help my tradition reach the whole world? Is I would like to teach the future generations so that they know how to weave, and in the future that generation can teach the next generation so that the tradition doesn't get lost. There's also technology like social media.
Bien, para terminar, el tejido a cintura para mí es una experiencia muy bonita, y yo quiero seguir tejiendo en mis ratos libres, así yo tejo, y también enseñarle a mis alumnos, a otras generaciones que vienen, para que no se pierda esa tradición.
To finish, weaving for me is a beautiful experience. I like to weave in my free time, and I'd like to teach my students in the future generation so that this tradition doesn't get lost in the future, and that way we can preserve it.
We have a couple of questions,
Muchas
Diana,
gracias.
before we move on, or before we wrap up. Can I ask those
Yes.
now?
Yes, you can ask them now. Te van a preguntar unas cositas ahorita. Yes, go ahead, Judy.
Sure. Mary Holm would like to know if she commits these designs to memory or if she works from a written pattern on paper.
Okay. Aquí quieren saber si es que tú tejes los diseños de memoria o trabajas con algún tipo de libro.
Bueno, yo lo tengo en mi memoria, algunos tejidos, porque son muchos, son bastantes, son cientos los diseños, pero yo los tengo algunos sí lo tenemos en un libro, y del libro lo sacamos.
Yes, I have most of them in my memory and I weave from my memory, but there are a lot. There are hundreds of designs, so some of them I don't remember them and we do have them in a book.
Oh, very good. I made a mistake. That was actually from Jane, not Mary. Question. Okay, I've got another couple. Who wove your clothing that you're wearing today?
¿Quién tejió la ropa que estás usando hoy día?
Eso lo tejió mi mamá.
My mom wove this.
Mi ropa todo me lo hizo mi mamá cuando era pequeña.
My mother made my clothing when I was little.
Es una tradición hacerle ropa para sus hijas en mi pueblo. Así, regalarle una ropa completa.
It is custom and a tradition for mothers to make the whole outfit, the traditional outfit for their young girls, young daughters, and gift it to them.
Very good. And finally, does she currently teach weaving to students, or are her teaching interests broader than weaving?
Ya. La última pregunta es, ¿ahorita estás enseñando tejido a algunos estudiantes o lo que enseñas es más en algo más amplio?
Sí, por ejemplo, en mi comunidad hay más niños, así que niñas y niños se están incorporando. Y obviamente que los que ya somos así mayores, los que ya estábamos un poco más tiempo, le enseñamos. Y particularmente a mí sí me gusta enseñar, sí tengo bastante paciencia para poder enseñar a los niños pequeños. Y sí les enseño a mis compañeros pequeños que se incorporan a lo que es la asociación.
She is currently teaching some of her younger members that are joining the youngers group in her community. In her community, the older generation, like older, younger weavers like her, would teach the younger ones are just in corporate young weavers group. She likes to do kids from her weaving group, and she really likes it.
Very good. There is one more question, but I'm going to save that so we can ask both. And does she want to stand up and show her outfit before we go on?
Yes. Ahora sí, ¿quieres mostrar tu traje? Antes de pasar a Hilda.
Bueno, ¿sí se ve, no?
Pero vamos a ver ya. Can you see her outfit?
Let's see. Let's put it on speaker view. Yes, maybe if she'd turn around and if you could talk so it stays on you.
¿Quieres voltearte para hablar si quieres explicar algo?
Bueno, de los tejidos.
Sí, sí quieres.
Bien, por ejemplo, aquí tiene diseños muy particulares, como ya le mencioné anteriormente, es patabamba. Siempre solemos tejer lo que es un diseño que es representativo a nuestra comunidad, que es patabamba.
Okay, in this piece, in her blanket, you can see the design of patabamba that she mentioned in her presentation. It is traditional for them to weave a design that is representative of their community.
Y así como también otros diseños que acompañan, aquí es un río que también está al lado de nuestra comunidad.
Okay, and there are other small designs that that accompany or like are together with the main designs. This one right here, it's a river. This river is also found right next to their village, and it's symbolic of them.
Bien, ahora también este es un sombrero, una olla, nosotros le llamamos, es algo particular de nuestra comunidad. Cada comunidad tiene su propia vestimenta y también nosotros tenemos nuestra propia vestimenta que nos identifica como una comunidad.
This hat is their traditional hat for them in their community. It's called Acoya. This is very specific to them because every community has a different hat that represents them, and it's something unique for them.
One more question about her outfit. What about that unusual border? Is that traditional or is that something her mother invented?
Okay. Ella está preguntando sobre el borde de tu manta, que lo ve algo inusual. ¿Eso es tradicional o es algo que tu mamá lo hizo?
Eso es algo que mi mamá, ahora últimamente ya se ha innovado porque más que todo las jóvenes que se les quiere ver algo coloridas o más representativas y pues por eso aumentan algunas cosas como por ejemplo el rosado que es más representativo para una señorita.
Yeah. Her mother did it. Traditions change with time and as something of innovation. Nowadays, the borders have changed so that it's more colorful and representative of each person. And in this case, in her case, the border is pink because it is more appropriate for a young lady.
Beautiful.
Gracias. Thank you. Okay, so we're just getting a little settled here so we can see Hilda next. There we go. Okay, Hilda, here's Hilda. Hilda is 17 years old. She is from the community of Accha Alta. She is currently studying accounting in a technical school called Kipu. She was a grant winner from the Moscow grants. She learned how to weave between around 9 years old and joined CTTC's Young Weavers group in her association in 2015.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. En esta oportunidad voy a hablar sobre cómo ha sido mi proceso de vida.
It is my pleasure to
En este año ya estoy estudiando la carrera de contabilidad en el Instituto Kipu.
My name is Hilda Yesica. I am from the community of Accha Alta, and this year I started studying accounting in the tech school Kipu.
¿Cómo y a qué edad aprendí a tejer? Yo aprendí a tejer a los 7 años de edad aproximadamente. Mi mamá y mi abuelita me enseñaron a tejer con la paciencia.
This is how I learned to weave and I started to weave. I learned how to weave at approximately 7 years old. My grandmother and my mother taught me with a lot of patience.
Estos son mis primeros tejidos, son algo pequeño porque como era pequeña aprendí las cosas que son más fáciles de realizar.
These are some of my first weavings. I learned the small things because when you're just starting to learn, it's easier with smaller things.
¿Cómo y cuándo entré a la asociación que pertenece a CTTC? Ingresé al grupo de niños y jóvenes de Accha Alta que en 2015 con 10 años de edad.
How and when did I join the CTTC Weaving Association? I joined the Young Weavers group in my weaving association in Accha Alta in 2015 when I was 10 years old.
Desde los 10 años trabajo con CTTC y me siento muy feliz y orgullosa de pertenecer a CTTC. Y también me gusta tejer en telar de cintura. He aprendido muchas cosas dentro de estos años.
I started weaving since it's with CTTC since I was 10 years old. I am very happy and proud to do it. I really like it. And I also really like to weave in backstrap loom. I learned a lot of things inside throughout these years.
¿En qué situación me encuentro hoy en día? Hoy en día, sí, en la asociación de CTTC estoy muy orgullosa y muy feliz por seguir perteneciendo a CTTC. Dentro de estos años he aprendido muchas cosas y a tejer cosas muy grandes.
What is my station today? Where I found today, I am still a part of the Young Weavers group in CTTC. I learned a lot of things, and I really like and enjoy being part of this Young Weavers group. I learned a lot in like bigger pieces.
Como parte de la Asociación de Jóvenes, he sido presidenta durante 2 años. He aprendido muchas cosas dentro de estos 2 años y también a cómo ser líder en una asociación y cómo dirigir una asociación de jóvenes.
Throughout my time in the Young Weavers group, I learned a lot of things. I was the president for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I learned a lot of new skills. I learned how to be a leader and how to direct a Young Weavers group.
Estos días estoy alejada de mi comunidad por el estudio, pero no me agrado y extraño mucho mi comunidad porque es campo y es muy divertido estar en ahí. Y también porque cuando estoy en mi comunidad todos los días tejo.
Right now, I'm a little distant from my community because of my studies, and I miss my community very much because it is out in the outdoors, in the fields, and it's fun. And that allows me to weave every day.
Quiero transmitir mis aprendizajes a las generaciones que vienen. Yo quiero transmitir mediante las enseñanzas. Quiero que en mi comunidad se siga practicando, invitando a los jóvenes, a los niños a que pertenezcan a nuestra asociación, que es muy lindo, que se aprende muchas cosas.
So how do I want to transmit my learning I know for future generations? Through teaching. I like young weavers in my community to continue to learn these practices and these traditions. It is very fun and beautiful, and younger generations should learn them.
La carrera que estoy estudiando, me gustaría apoyar a mi comunidad, a mi asociación. En algún momento necesiten capital para que produzcan sus productos, yo podría brindarles como créditos para que tengan el capital y puedan seguir produciendo.
With my career that I'm studying currently, I like to help my weaving association in my community. I could provide capital for them since they'll need capital to continue to produce and sell their textiles, and I could provide that to them so that they can continue with their work.
Quiero transmitir mediante las enseñanzas. Quiero que
más estoy dispuesta a aportar manejando las redes sociales, ya que hoy en día es muy común y manejar las redes sociales. Yo pensaría hacer como crear alguna cuenta y publicar ahí nuestros diseños, cómo nos enseñaron, cómo hemos aprendido, todo ese proceso, y también colgar nuestros tejidos y que los turistas vean, puedan adquirir o quizás pueden desear comprar.
I would also like to help my association with management of social media because it is very common and important nowadays. I like to publish our weavings, our designs, our weaving process, so that the tourists and visitors can see it and maybe purchase some of them or want to purchase some of them.
Es mi asociación, hemos tejido estas cosas y
This is my weaving association. These are some of the things that we've woven together. Now I'd like to show you my traditional outfit.
Estos son los tejidos que realizamos, como se puede ver en la pantalla también, y son muy diferentes diseños.
These are some of the textiles that we make in my community. Some you can see in the screen right now. And as you can, and the designs from the pieces that we make are very different, as you can see here.
Cada diseño tiene su nombre y tiene su significado.
Each design has its own name and its own meaning.
Por ejemplo, esto le decimos Accha Alta, significa rosas.
Okay, so this design over here, for example, is called Accha Alta, and it means roses.
Cada diseño, tenemos muchas variedades de diseños y cada diseño tiene su significado de la comunidad, allá que puede representar naturaleza, animales, todo eso.
We have many designs from our community that are traditional, and their interpretation for each one of them is different. And from our community, they all present things like nature, our lives, and our surroundings. Okay, so she'll show her outfit now.
Este es mi traje típico, este es la montera, esta es la yihya, esta es la juyuna y esto es nuestra pollera.
Okay. This is my traditional outfit. This is my montera or hat. This is the traditional hat. This is their traditional blanket. Here is her hobona or jacket. And this is their traditional pollera or skirt. Yeah. Do you have any
We'd
questions?
like to know about her hat also.
¿Quieren saber más sobre tu montera?
Ok, mi montera, esto está hecho a mano, guato, esto está hecho con paja o con olla.
This was actually made by her grandfather. Her hat is all made by hand. This I'm going to add something here. This is actually a very unique technique from them, and they call it wato, or just the string. And the upper part, what it's underneath this, is actually made of straw, and they call it koya. Wonderful.
Okay, are we ready for some questions now?
¿Están listos para algunas preguntas? Yes, they are.
Okay, very good. Before we start with theirs, I have one. I noticed in the first presentation, she referred to waist weaving in her English version, and we're more accustomed to hearing that described as backstrap weaving, I think. Is there a difference? Have the traditions changed, or is it just a translation thing?
Ok. En la presentación tuya, May Sharon, su pregunta es, en tu página, en tu PPT, vieron que usaste waist weaving en tu traducción, que es traducción de cintura, pero ellos están acostumbrados a la traducción de backstrap weaving. Entonces ella está preguntando si hay alguna modificación en años en la técnica o es solamente la traducción. No, cuando dijiste en tu traducción, le pusiste waist weaving, como tu telar de cintura.
Ah, ya, tejido de cintura.
Ajá.
Sí, es que para que lo puedan apreciar que está escrito en inglés, porque la mayoría creo que hablaba inglés, por eso lo traduzco.
Fue tu traducción.
Sí, fue mi traducción.
Yeah.
Normalmente aquí decimos solamente tejido de cintura.
Okay. It is the same technique. She put it in her own words in translation as waist weaving so that everyone in the public can better understand, because most of the public speaks in English.
Oh, very good. One question about the hats. Are they felted?
For both of them or one in specific?
For both.
Ok, para las dos una pregunta. Para sus monteras, ¿están como que en felta o es una tela?
¿La montera?
Ajá, lo que lo cubre.
No, es, por ejemplo, aquí se ve la colla.
Ajá.
Esa es la colla. Y está bordado o tapado con una tela.
Ya, ¿y en tu caso?
También en este caso todo está tapado. Para que le dé forma es la colla acá.
Ahí.
Pero está tapado, está más adornado, algo así se podría decir.
They are not felted. The structure of their hats is made with straw, like May Sharon just showed you in the inside, and then it's covered with fabric, with just traditional wool fabric.
Oh.
In the case of Patabamba, you can still see the inside with straw, and then it's just the upper side that is covered. And in the case of Hilda in Accha Alta, the structure, you can feel it here, and maybe you can hear it a little bit, that it's colla or the straw, and both underneath and in the upper side is all covered with fabric.
Oh, very good. I have one more question about the clothing, and then I'm going to go on to a question about the future. The question about the clothing is it made from cotton or wool, and do they pass them to their children or to other people? What happens when they're done wearing them?
Ok. Ya, esta es la última pregunta sobre sus trajes. Ella quiere saber si está hecho de lana o de algodón, y después si se lo pasan a sus hijos o qué pasa con el traje cuando ya lo dejan de usar.
Bueno, eso está hecho de lana de oveja, teñido con tintes naturales. Y bueno, eso es una tela, bueno, es comprada eso. Sí, de lana también. La pollera también es una bayeta, es también hecho por nuestras mamás. Y si nosotros ya, bueno, dejamos de utilizar, le regalamos así a nuestros hijos, o así, por ejemplo, mi mamá me regaló a mí algunas de sus prendas.
Okay. So May Sharon just explained to us that her traditional blanket is 100% wool with natural dyes. And the jacket and her skirt are made with a different fabric. Well, the jacket is with a different fabric that's just store-bought, but it's made of wool. And her skirt, her pollera is made of a different style of wool technique that is called bayeta, and it was woven or made by her mother. And in the future, when they stop using their clothing, they usually gift it to their children, like a lot of the clothing pieces that she has were from her mother.
En todo caso, que si ya se desgasta mucho, lo guardamos como un recuerdo. Por ejemplo, de mi abuelita, si lo tengo una manta que es muy antigua y está muy desgastando, y ahora lo estamos guardando.
Okay. In the case of the pieces, the clothing pieces are very worn off. They just save them as a memorabilia for the future. So for example, she has a blanket or a piece from her grandmother that is very old and worn off, and she is just saving it for the future. Sí, ahora tú.
Esto está hecho de ovejas, lana de oveja. Esto también es lana de oveja natural. Estos también son de lana de oveja. Esto es tela.
Tela.
De bayeta.
Ya no es de lana.
Ya no es de lana.
Ya.
Y esto es oveja
Ya.
también. Esto también. Y todo eso, casi la mayoría está hecho de lana de oveja.
Ya.
Es natural.
Yeah. Okay. Hilda, in the case of Hilda's outfit is the straps in her hat are 100% wool and natural dyes. Her traditional blankets is also 100% wool and natural dyes. But her jacket isn't. It's just a synthetic fabric that is bought and put in. I can't really tell what the material is, but it's not cotton. Her kind of sweater that they wear underneath, it is called bayeta. Again, it's a different type of woven textiles. Yeah, it's not the backstrap, but it's a different style. It is 100% wool. And her skirt, her traditional skirt, is also bayeta and it's 100% wool.
Very good. For those of you that have to leave, I know it's after 2. We're going to go on for about another 10 minutes or so with questions because there's so many. Sorry to interrupt, Diana.
Oh, that's okay. ¿Qué haces con tu traje?
Nuestros trajes, esto por ejemplo me lo hizo todito mi abuelito.
Yeah.
Me lo hizo mi abuelito, pero como vas creciendo dejas de utilizar y yo le doy a mis hermanitos o mi mamá me pasa a mí.
Yeah. Okay. For example, in her case, in her women association, when they grow up, they give their traditional outfit to their younger siblings, or maybe a mother would give them to her daughter. In her case, her whole outfit was made by her grandfather, actually. And when she grows and stops wearing them, she gives them to her younger siblings.
Okay, very good. Let's see. There's a question about their peers. Do they have friends who are not in the Weaving Association? And if so, do they make it difficult for them to follow traditional ways, or do young people embrace this type of work in general?
Yeah. La pregunta ahora para los dos es sobre sus tejidos. Quieren saber si tienen amigos o compañeros que no están en la asociación de tejedores de grupos de niños y jóvenes, y si eso lo hace más difícil para ustedes para continuar tejiendo, o su generación simplemente lo toma bien y continúa.
Bueno, en mi caso sí tengo así amigos, compañeros que no están dentro de la asociación de CTTC, pero eso es como algo normal, es una costumbre, es una tradición que lo realizamos, y también ellos no nos critican nada de eso, más bien lo preservan, o sea, simplemente lo respetamos.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the case of Miss Sharon, she does have friends and peers that are not in the Weaving Association or Weave. But they understand that it's part of their culture and part of their customs. So they don't criticize them for anything or make fun of them. They actually respect it.
En mi caso también tengo amigos, tíos, tías que no pertenecen a la asociación, también jóvenes que no pertenecen. No nos afecta que no pertenezcan porque somos como casi 30, entonces seguimos practicando, y si en algún momento cambian de opinión, estamos como que abiertos a recibir.
Yeah. In the case of Hilda, she does have friends, peers, and even family like aunts and uncles that don't weave and don't form part of the weaving association. And it doesn't affect her. It doesn't affect them. They continue to weave because they are a large group of 30 and they are proud of it. And if at some point their peers, friends, or family changes their mind and they want to start weaving, they are very welcoming to bring them in and teach them how to weave.
Very good. Thank you. Someone commented that the poise and expertise the young weavers show is very admirable.
Ahí hay un comentario de alguien en el público que dice que su presencia y su presentación profesional de ustedes es muy admirable como tejedores jóvenes.
Gracias. Thank you.
You're welcome. How about language? Is Spanish a second language? Is there a different language they speak in their villages?
Okay. Ahora la pregunta es sobre su idioma. ¿Español es su segundo idioma y hay otro idioma que hablan en sus comunidades?
Sí, es el quechua.
Mi primer idioma es quechua, luego aprendí castellano a los 10, 11 años más o menos.
Okay. For both of them, their first language is Quechua, which is still a living, almost dead language here in Peru. Hilda just mentioned that she actually didn't learn Spanish until she was about 10 or 11.
Oh, very good.
Sí, de mí también mi lengua materna es el quechua. Aprendí cuando inicié la primaria, así aprendí mi segunda lengua que es el español.
For Miss Sharon, her first language is also Quechua, and she didn't actually learn Spanish until she started primary school, so about like six or 7 years old, sometimes even 5. Yeah.
Very good. All right, we have a question for you, Diana. How were the lost techniques discovered and recreated that you've been working with?
Okay, wonderful question. So a lot of these lost techniques are documented in books or some of the pieces that have been recovered from graves, older graves and things are shown in the museums. Then someone specialized in pre-Columbian techniques in different museums, study them, study the technique, study the fibers, how they are intertwined with each other based on what the knowledge that we have in other books that are published and so on. And CTTC contacts some of them contact us, and we start working with them first to evaluate the process if we have time, which association has weaving techniques that are similar to what we want to recover. So we would start with them first in a smaller group and work with these studious people that have studied that technique for many years. Usually you have a group of maybe 5 to 10 people that learn from them firsthand when they come to Peru, in Cusco usually, in our offices. And then once they practice it and perfection it, then they teach their weaving association, and then their weaving association teaches the rest of the weaving association. So that is our general process of how we start recovering those lost techniques.
Thank you for explaining that. I have a couple of production questions. One is, where does the wool come from that is used? Do they raise animals in their village, or do they purchase it? And the second one is whether they know how to spin or whether they buy yarn that's already been spun.
Okay. Well, actually, the girls can also answer that question if you want more details, but it depends from weaving association to weaving association. Some of them are in places where they do grow alpacas or sheep in large quantities. And so they produce their own wool, spin them by hand, and then they make their own weavings with that. Some of the other weaving associations have less access to their own wool, so we help them purchase it from from a larger company that has natural, like 100% natural wool or alpaca wool. We work with them because they're fair trade and also more sympathetic with the animals, and we provide it to them. They help us with the purchase of that, with the value of the purchase of that. That can be through loans that they pay slowly throughout the years or through the years, depending on how their sales go. And that's how they produce it. Now, the production of the textiles, we usually just have an order of like, we need more blankets or we need more chuyos per se, like the hats, and then it's up to them to decide what color combination they want, what wool they have available, and use it for that order.
Very good. I think we could go on for a long time with questions. There are still more unanswered, but I think it's time to wrap up the presentation for today. I want to thank all three of you on behalf of WARC. This has been fascinating. You've shown us great insight into the importance of weaving and textiles as a main focus of life in your country, and for that we applaud you and appreciate you. There will be a video sent out, a link to the video to everyone next week. I just wanted to remind you, you will get an email if you'd like to make a contribution either to the ATA fundraiser or to the individual artists. That would be greatly appreciated, and we'll let you know how to do that as well. Do you have any final words, Kelsey, or are we good to sign off for today?
Well, this has just been fantastic. And I guess my final words would just be, again, to thank everyone for attending today. And thank you to the three of you for the beautiful representation of your work and the weaving there in your region. So thank you so much for being here.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the organization.